Hey guys, welcome back to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. I'm Jazz Marie, aka Vevna Forrow. So, previously on the podcast, I was giving you a tour of After Dinner Conversation. Again, it is a magazine that focuses on short stories, right, and fiction, right? So, if you love fictional short stories, totally listen back to that previous episode. And don't forget also an episode, I think it was 61, I covered the fish list. And in that episode was coverage a little bit of fiction on the web and the various industry rankings as well. So that may be an episode to check out. And yeah, so I actually changed my mind. I know I mentioned in the past two episodes I was going to cover some, Litmags journals I've, interacted with, maybe had, work placed in and, do something around that. But, and even cover submitter questions a little bit more. However, I think I'm going to turn some of those things I thought of and questions into typed out articles. And I think, after this episode, what I'm going to do is start doing some interviews type episodes. There's a lot of video based content already, and I sort of took a break from doing like back and forth interview Q&A type things like I did with like Hummingbird Blink, that other podcast, tied to Dippity. But yeah, so definitely, be sure to check out again, aside from YouTube, Spotify, you can watch the screen recordings like this. The typed out articles I've been doing too, because I'm going to probably do a couple more of those. If you ever see me, drop off from episodes, I'll from time to time, do those, yeah. So today you can see I am on seasidegothic.com, and this is going to be instead one more spotlight episode here and under the slide as I nicknamed these. And yeah, so let's get started here. Seaside Gothic. So I came across them, I think actually through Chill Subs, and I thought it was really cool. I personally really love movies that feature the sea or highlighted in books even. And I've done creative works around the moon and the sea and things like that. And I had a this year I had an acceptance early in the year from Boats Against the Current mag. Even I think what I was thinking back to, memories of like me watching like Deadliest Catch, Bering Sea Gold. I watched all the episodes of that, when I was younger, and I was really into like series like that. Although I've never, done anything like that. I've been on small, very small, river type boats and stuff. Nothing that massive or anything like that. I've been. I think I have a photo of myself, next to a lifesaver, ring, and then like some ship photos or by the water and stuff with my mom and my folks, when we were traveling. But yeah, I think the sea is really beautiful, bodies of water. I'm in the desert now, so so bodies of water, water that, if you get stuck in the desert, water is like a necessity, right? So anyways, I really, really like publications that have sea in their name or focus on the sea. There's another one, Frozen Sea. I think there's a Frozen Sea journal right out there that I came across, and I think I've checked them out before too. Really cool one. I don't know if I'll cover them on this podcast. If I have time, maybe I will, or I might do some listry guys too. I know a lot in the lit mag community and press world love list. I love list. I'm a list type person. Even to do lists, I love just how that's how I keep track of task and yeah. Yeah, so Seaside Gothic, let's head over as usual to the Chill Subs overview page. Again, don't forget you can see my screen, what I'm talking about, on YouTube, Spotify, and elsewhere. So yeah, I'm going to scroll down to the About section here. So it looks like Seaside Gothic is based in the United Kingdom, founded in 2021. So they've been around a couple of years, right? 4 years. And yeah, quoting this off of the Chill Subs overview page, right? They live beside the seaside and write amidst the changing of the tide on paper, warped by the salt in the air, and wet from the spray of the sea. From this divide, they look for writing that expresses the sense of border living that is shared between the coast and the ocean, where language is pushed to the horizon and words take on new form as they find their home where the sea meets the sky. Yeah, so that's really cool. And yeah, so I think I've covered a couple lit magazine journals, or maybe one or two at least, that are based in out of the UK, and even platforms, right? The Submission Man system, I think Dapples was right based out of London, I recall, right? Yeah. So totally, if you dig through past podcast episodes, but I'm gonna just check. So Fishless, yeah, 970 out of 1,830. Rankings change over time, right? Brack top 1,815 out of 1,000. And yeah, so Masthead. So it looks like the editor in chief is Seb Riley. I'm sorry if I mispronounce any names. It looks like they're editorial assistants as well. The acceptance rate is showing 15.64%, and there's no fee to submit, which is awesome, right? Payment varies. So I'm not sure about conversions. I'm horrible at those, but in terms of GBP and Great British pounds and all of that stuff. So I think it's showing one here. Like I don't know what that would be. 0.01, and then yeah. So is that, I don't know. You could do, like I do a lot with international, lit magazine journals. I'm going to submit to them, right? Conversion calculators, they're out there, so you could totally convert that. I don't know if that's like, is that 13 cents in USD? I don't know. I could be completely wrong, but yeah, you could look it up. You can see on my screen, right? I think it says 20 GBP for multimedia. I think that's what it's showing on the hover here. Yeah, I don't know what the conversion rate on that would be. I probably could look it up for you guys after this or something. Yeah. Response time is showing 90 days, editor reported data, and then chill subs tracker stats. So those who have, used or leveraged chill subs to input the decision, and keep tabs on it, there is showing an average of 77 days. And yeah, so that's awesome. They do nominate for prizes, so that's cool too. And yeah. In terms of their vibe, it says send us your best but less intimidating. And I think 20 GBP, if you do a conversion on that, I was just looking at for you guys. I think it's showing to, as of the conversion rate today is showing $26 USD, about approximately that. So yeah, that would be for multimedia though. Nonfiction is different, right? So I'm not sure. I think that could be 13 cents for USD though, and converting that out, per word. I could be wrong on that. If I am, I'm sorry. But of course, you could look that up. So yeah, they have some recommendations on here already, right? It says hidden gem, transparent process, encouraging vibes, respectful editor, beautiful website. And they have some calls, right? They're closed right now, but they have, I think, some upcoming window in January too. So totally a place to circle back to and check out, because I think they have a very cool setup and structure overall. Yeah. So yeah, you can see we have memoir calls, right? +4. It says opens in 69 days, right? Up to 1,000 words, up to one piece, right? And then general, right? Up to one piece, right? No fee. And literary +1, right? I think it's showing fiction, flash, literary, right? Gothic, up to 1,000 words, up to one piece, right? Art, general multimedia. I think it's showing photography in this too. We'll check out the website. I don't know about that, but it says multimedia, right, on and up to 10 pieces. And again, pay is 20 GBP, right? So I think that's 26 USD. Yeah. Um, yeah. Stats. Let's see how many. They've been bookmarked 379 times. About 107 have tracked through chill subs their decisions, right? So 6 were accepted and 32 rejected, and there's some pending and withdrawn. You can see here. Yeah. So again, the acceptance rates averaging, reported 15.64% approximately. The more that use chill subs or use it to track decisions and report that in, that becomes a little bit more accurate there. And yeah, so I think that's pretty much it on the chill subs overview page. Let's head over to the website. Yeah. So yeah, this is their website. It's really cool. And oh, I almost forgot. So yeah, they do have a duotrope listing. And duotrope, again, aside from chill subs, is another great way to find and discover more lit magazine journals. If you been following this podcast, you're probably already aware of that. Always mention it. And Duosuma, right, is a submission management system as well, tied back to Duotrope, right, connected. And, yeah, so uh, definitely, so this is something I just wanted to point out on Duotrope, right? So there is an AI policy section, right? So I think that's nice that Duotrope has this, right? Human created work only, no AI use allowed. So yeah, I think that's cool. And I think they have, again, interviews with editors. Again, I don't know if this is, yeah, so they do have an interview with the founder and editor, it looks like, yeah. So Seaside Writing, again, is what they publish, just quoting things off from the interview with Seb Riley. And yeah, so it's quoting this from Seb Riley again. So it states here the ideal submission to Seaside Gothic is singular, either a single short story, a poem, a creative nonfiction piece, or a collection of images that work as a whole and is original in its approach. It should meet the three criteria of Seaside Gothic literature, being led by emotion, addressing duality, and connecting to the edge. It should not be reliant on cliched tropes, but be astounding in its creativity. It should surprise, right? They want to be surprised, yeah. And yeah, again, the typical error they see, right? Not reading the guidelines. I see that too. At Dippy Lit Mag, Dippy Press. Read the guidelines very, very carefully, criteria, and look at the publication. Get a feel for the work that is published as well, of course. And yeah, they said they're not particularly interested in cover letters. Yeah, and the states, yeah, they've totally rejected submissions from well-known established names, yeah, and things like that. The submission should speak for itself, yeah. So yeah, that's why I really like submission man systems too. I think they, at Seaside Gothic, all submissions are done to date via email, but with some submission management systems like Subfolio, which Dippy Lit Mag's on, right, and Dippy Press, so you can conceal the cover letter and just focus on the work itself. A few other submission management systems have the ability to conceal cover letter information, right. Submittable, right, is fairly well known. Dapple, right, that's new, based out of London, right, and yeah. So yeah, so I won't read through all of the interview, but I like these interviews. If you're gonna start your own lit mag journal, I think it's fun to read these too. And it really goes back to what it's like on the other side for an editor sometimes. What is the day in life of an editor, right? And the how much they accept work, what comes through their window when they start reading, and all of that. I think it's very insightful, these interviews, if you're going to start your own lit mag journal, that Duotrope has. Chill Subs as well has, again, I've showed on this podcast some interviews as well, and other places, other podcasts have interviewed, right, founding editors and things like that. So I think it helps to listen to others' experiences running a lit mag journal, like I've done this podcast, just sharing that earlier in the series. Um, yeah, and how much editing is done, after an accepted piece prior to publication. If they love a piece, typically they leave it unchanged. Minor, smallest corrections, of course, are always discussed with the author before publication. Yeah, that's pretty typical. They nominate for Pushcart Prize and other awards. So yeah, this was from, it looks like 3 years ago, this editor interview. So that's really nice. Yeah. So yeah, again, you can see, guidelines outlined again on Duotrope is a good place to double check things typically, but always remember to see what's current on the website, because it takes some time for, Duotrope's team to update this as well, or for maybe the founding editor to request changes to anything, if anything has changed, in terms of guidelines or new calls and things like that. So back to the website. Yeah, I think this website's really cool. I like the use of images here and photography. We'll take a closer look at this. So I think they have a very unique structure in the sense of how they integrate Patreon, right? I've shared on this podcast quite a few lit mags journals, presses even out there, right? They leverage Patreon, membership tiers, and are very creative with the bonuses. Others, who join their Patreon get access to, right, the benefits from doing that and unlocking different, benefits. So yeah, I think this is a WordPress based site. Yeah. So let's click on one of these. So this is subscriber exclusive. So I think if I click on this, it's going to say you have to be a Patreon member, right? It may say, part of it is, yeah. So to view this content, you must be a member of a paid Patreon subscription tier. Let's click on that for you guys so you can see. It may take a little bit here. So yeah, you can see here a magazine from the edge of the sea, right? They have 280 posts, and some I think there's a way to hide the amount or members or amount of monthly, for the stats. But anyways, that's cool, So, I think if we go to, yeah, become a member, right, that's where we can see the different tiers they have. So I think it helps to see this again, because if you start your own Patreon for your Lit Mag journal, right, just to see examples of a couple different Patreons, right, I've shown you Chestnut Review and other ones, right, on this podcast, right, that are leveraging Patreon, after dinner conversation as well, and several others, right? So digital subscription, right? It's just $3 a month. You subscribe digitally to Seaside Gothic and gain access to subscriber only online content, including all published writing from every issue, and receive a 25% discount on all issues of Seaside Gothic purchased directly. They have a UK print subscription, which is $7.50 a month. You subscribe to quarterly print issues of Seaside Gothic delivered to a UK address, along with additional exclusive merchandise sent biannually. Plus, gain access to subscriber only online content at seasidegothic.com, including all published writing from every issue, and you get the 25% discount on all issues, right? Yeah, so bonus merchandise, print magazine subscription, 25% off, issue discount, digital subscription, right? They do have an international print subscription, so that's awesome, right? So it's $14.50 a month. So again, you basically, get everything, right? Yeah. And yeah, it's equivalent to that UK print subscription, but it's for international, right? So it looks like higher, right? Yeah, $14.50, compared to the UK printed subscription, $7.50. And that makes sense, right? International, right? And yeah, it's typically, things have been very costly, lately, with all the, shipping and ordering and stuff, right? It's so messed up, right, guys? So yeah, but I think that's awesome. They have really cool, membership tiers, and you can be creative with the names of your membership tiers too, as you saw with like Chestnut Review. So yeah, so that's their Patreon. Let's go back a page. So essentially, how they have it set up, right? You join. I think this is a unique structure because I don't see a lot of lit mags and journals with this. Sure, I've come across lit mags that paywall some of the publications or some bonus content like interviews, or there have been lit mags and journals that give you access to like maybe three free. I'm not saying Seaside Gothic, but one's out there that gives you access to like three free reads on their page, or three of the latest for free, and then the rest are all paywalled, or you have to join their site or become a member, right? And yeah, it supports the publication. I mean, there are different ways to do it. I personally am not a huge fan of paywalling publications, but it is absolutely hard for publications to sustain funding and things like that. I've been thinking about myself, starting a Patreon of some kind. Yeah, and I think they don't just use Patreon. I think they also have uh I think it's Ko-fi, right? So Ko-fi, I think they have a Ko-fi page as well, Seaside Gothic. And yeah, buy me a coffee, other ones exist, right? A lot of lit magazine journals use more than one support option in terms of donations. But that's nice. They have the issue, right? It's tied to subscriber exclusive. So you could, I've shared on this podcast, some places have, exclusive, online publications or bonus content paywalled. So it's something to think about. But I think just keep in mind, again, um, obviously, writers, I think a lot of them would like, right, their loved ones, their families, right, to be able to read the issues. If it's not in print and online, right, then, yeah, that's going to be, others are going to resort to probably having to need, right, the membership to read it, right? If it's in print, right, they could pick up an issue, or order that. But I think it's nice, for publications to be publicly accessible. And you sort of saw that, Chestnut Review, right? They have, everything accessible, and they have their membership. and things like that. I've seen some publications use Patreon for just strictly bonus content, and things like that. Yeah, but yeah, I see quite a few lit magazine journals have some paywalled publications or subscriber exclusive ones. So it is fairly common. And yeah, anyways, their site is really beautiful. I love the images that they have here, the photography. Yeah. So you can see this an example. I think this is one of the free publications. So they have always the writer's bio at the bottom. And yeah, it looks like they take, again, international submissions, right? This one is from a writer in Northern Ontario, Canada, right? So yeah, I think that's really cool. Following Seas, Terra Night. That's really cool. And yeah, so not every single thing on their site is subscriber exclusive, which is nice. So some publications do like 50-50. Half of it's free to read, half of it's not, or a portion is free to read for everyone. And I think it helps others who want to submit to a issue or read it, or to get a feel for it, what they're looking for. So yeah, these are really cool. I think there's a really nice layout on their website. And yeah, so that's the homepage. Let's see what else we have here. So, right, subscribe, right? That takes you to the Patreon again, and then we have issue 14, which is available now. It's out of stock at the right here. So I don't know if they offered these digitally or well, yeah, I think in the Patreon, right? I think it shared there was a digital subscription, right? So yeah, um, I think if someone came across this page, it might not be clear off the bat, though, if they were looking to pick it up. So that's my only comment. But yeah, really beautiful cover. And yeah, the issue. So they have the description, everyone who's involved. Some of the pieces are available to read for free. And yeah, we've sort of seen, I've seen this with, in 32 Poems podcast episode, right? They had, some free reads from the issue, and then others were strictly in the print, right, issue, or yeah, it could be picked up in the issue, right? So yeah, I think that's nice, right? They have all contributors, the issue visible. And yeah, it looks like it's fairly reasonable for those to order who are based out of the UK, right? And yeah, I would say even like with Dippy, most of our readers are predominantly have been out of the US, right? UK and Australia, to date, and Canada too. So predominantly those places, right? Yeah, so that's issue 14. They have previous issues. Always nice to see. So yeah, you can read more. Let's look at a past issue, issue 13. I'm just curious on what it looks like. So yeah, it looks like it can be ordered, right? They have a PayPal or buy with a, Google Pay here, options, right? Checkout. And yeah, so that's cool. And yeah. So yeah, I think the covers are really beautiful. I love the photography. It's really nice, yeah. Totally. So yeah, this is really cool. I really love the photography and the cover art. I think it's really beautiful. So yeah, it looks very peaceful. Some of these covers, right? Totally. I think when you like sit by the water or things like that, it's just really lovely, right? And I like this one, this cover. Number 11, right? 11, it's one of my favorite numbers in existence. Some of you know why. Yeah. So I think that's it. The totem, what's that? I don't know what that is. Is that a gift shop or merchandise? Yeah, tote, I think, or newspaper event. Okay. I thought that was a tote bag. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm so sorry. Newspaper event. So yeah, that's cool. I haven't seen a singular newspaper event. Oh, it has a 99% discount code for treasure hunt, free with orders that are 10 GBP or more, excluding shipping. Yeah, and then contributors. So that's cool. I think this is like a newspaper. Solve the riddle to win a lifetime digital subscription to Seaside Gothic. So yeah, they have riddles. I love that. At Dippy Lit Mag, right? Totally. In our legacy issues, I always some of them, not all of them, but three of them at least or so. I've done. Two or three have done riddles, right? I love riddles and puzzles, including some interactive fun things in our issues. So I love to see that. I'm a fan of riddles too, so that's cool. What's so the treasure hunt, right? So yeah, it's a logic puzzle. I think this is nice. I've seen London Magazine, I think some other places do some, almost like a crossword puzzle style thing, some fun things in the issues, right? And even on their social media, some very fun things like that. So just keep that in mind. If you start your own lit mag journal, you can do some fun things like that, right? Yeah, so that's cool. They have a logic puzzle with real world elements. Yeah, and it says members of their staff, of course, are ineligible for entering. It's like a treasure, and I think this is unique. I've never seen any place do this before, like a treasure hunt of some kind. I mean, I've seen puzzles again. I mentioned right, and other things like that. So yeah, so I'm just reading through it here a little bit. So there are, I think, instructions to it, so yeah, the treasure hunt essentially has to be solved, and you win, I think, there's subscription prizes, right, included in this. So I won't read through all of it, but I think this is fun, a treasure hunt of some kind, a logic puzzle with real world elements. That looks like a lot of fun, by the way. So yeah, the masthead page again. So yeah, I've already covered this, right? So they have, their, overview, what, again, and the three criteria. So keep this in mind, if you're going to submit to them in the future. And yeah, so I think that's really cool. So Seaside Gothic is edited by Seb Riley and published by Plunder. I don't know what Plunder is. Let's click on that. I'm just curious if that takes us anywhere. Plunder Books. Oh, so this is cool. So I like it. It has like a skull and pirate plunder vibe, like arg. I've drawn a fair share of pirates. Cartoon pirates, and back when I was younger. Yeah, and watched quite a lot of like Voyage at Sea movies and all of that stuff. So that's cool. Plunder, right? This looks really awesome. By the way, looks very fun. Yeah, I love the vibes inside of this place. Very cool. Yeah, that's a really nice bookshop, tea room, and boardroom. Yeah. So that's awesome. I didn't know about Plunder's existence actually. And I've been on Seaside Gothic's site before. We'll see. I've submitted to a couple places. I've covered on this podcast, like Lothlorien Journal. I shared was one of the first places I had an acceptance, right, and then another one, Scrawl Place. I did prior to the episode, a couple months, Scrawl Place, guys. The travel literary journal, right? For I submitted to them a couple months prior to the episode. I did get actually have an upcoming two poems in Scrawl Place, which is really cool, tied to Asia. So that's awesome. I did try again, with them, and I think what I did differently in terms of just sharing this additional note here, before we tour more Seaside Gothic. So what I did differently again, the first time I submitted to Scrawl Place, right, I had submitted just like a general marketplace, food court, rights, So upon my next try, from this year, what I did differently was really zero in on at least three specific locations that really were most memorable to me. When I visited my grandparents in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, with my folks, right? And yeah, so really zeroed on that. I also thought back to photographs of my grandparents, my family trips over the years to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And yeah, so again, I have family in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I have family also in Brooklyn, New York. And I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I wound up in Nevada. Wound up in by Las Vegas, Nevada. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, just sharing. So yeah, I was going to do an episode around places to check out, places I've tried or things I did differently. So yeah, I've submitted to a couple sea themed places myself because I'm a fan of the sea or anything tied to that. Just some of you know that in the community. I've mentioned that on, I think, other podcasts. But anyways, back to Seaside Gothic. So yeah, I think this is really cool. Again, they have a newspaper event, the treasure hunt. That's very unique. It says the treasure hunt has not yet been solved, guys. Oh my gosh. So that's like that's interesting, that's really cool, I think, I think that's awesome. Anyways, so As a venture, Seaside Gothic is entirely nonprofit. It states here, with all income being invested into paying contributors, as well as future print costs and distribution. The writers, authors, poets, photographers, illustrators, and creators who submit their work to Seaside Gothic are essential, again, to the existence of the magazine, and so are the primary monetary concern. Along with offering a print magazine, Seaside Gothic is available digitally through a subscription via Patreon. Yeah, so that's nice. They offer two formats, right? A digital subscription through Patreon, right? The membership tiers there, and again, they do have an international subscription option as well, which is nice. Yeah. So Seaside Gothic, it states here, is committed to creating a minimal environmental impact. Issues are printed are on environmental friendly, certified paper from sustainable resources using vegetable based inks and packaged in plastic free envelopes where possible made from 80% recycled materials. So that's nice, yeah. Yeah. So they mention, right, postage is provided by Royal Mail second class in the UK and Royal Mail International standard throughout the world to ensure a minimal carbon footprint. So yeah, I like that. I like late magazine journals that focus on environmental impact or mention that, a little bit. I think, that's important. Obviously, I would love to have run myself an eco-friendly lit mag journal press, but over the years, totally my parents would buy nothing but certified organic products and stuff. People always knew that. Me growing up, it was like, oh, you're the person who eats nothing but healthy meals, organic. Of course, I eat desserts and things like that, but anything we would purchase, like we would specifically get a lot of organic, clothing, even, and things like that, or 100% cotton. Very, my parents were, I would say, concerned about environmental footprints and stuff like that, and things like that. But over the years, I think that sort of changed. And, when we moved and all of that stuff, a lot of things changed in my life. But still, really, I think it's important to take consideration if you're a publishing house or a publisher about like the materials you're using. I think that is important. Yeah, so really cool again, right? They have their masthead, right? The staff. So there are editorial assistants, guest editors here. They have their ISSN, print and digital. If you're wondering how, to go about ISSN, the process, right? I discussed my experience with it, out of the US, right? So there's an episode where I cover that, ISSN, and also the difference between that and ISBN. And yeah, so they have their address, contact information, which is nice. Yeah, so yeah, again, they mention, right, no AI, which is nice. Again, they have a donate a scallop to Seaside Gothic, right? It looks like from right, the coffee, right, or Kofi, right? I always say it's hard because there's buy me a coffee and there's also Kofi, right? I think Kofi, again, they said the pronunciation of it, the one that looks like Wi-Fi, Ko dash Fi, is it sort of can be pronounced in the sense that it goes with no fee, right? Kofi, right? It rhymes a little bit there. I think that's what they said. Anyways, yeah. So I don't know. Let's take a look at their page here. So yeah, a lot of publishers have some sort of Ko-fi page or buy me coffee, and yeah, I just created one also for this podcast and Dippity too, and yeah, and aside from Substack, I think is a way I've seen a lot of lit magazine journals get pledges for support too and things like that. And yeah, so that's cool. And yeah, so absolutely, always a good idea to have some sort of donation or subscription option. Patreon, I think, is a really nice platform a lot of creators and publishers, of course, use, right? And yeah, so is that pretty much it? Yeah, I think that's it. So actually, we scroll down to the bottom of the website here. There's submissions, right? And I covered this a little bit on the Chill Subs overview page, but yeah, again, they just cover what they publish again, right? Fiction, poetry, and nonfiction, right? Meaning their criteria. Each issue also features a selection of images from a single photographer artist, including the cover. All contributors are paid. Each issue also features a selection of images from a single photographer or artist, including the cover. All contributors are paid and credited in the magazine by name, for which a profile picture and short biographical statement must be provided. To gain an understanding of what the editor of Seaside Gothic is looking for, yes, it says read previous issues. Look at the free to access examples of content from each issue, online, which can be found. Yeah, so then they, said you can contact if you need, any, if you have accessibility requirements or anything like that. Again, they do not charge submission fees, and yeah, that's awesome, right? You can subscribe again via Patreon or donate the equivalent of a cup of coffee to the magazine, which is nice. Yeah, so I think that's awesome. I again, when we started Dippy Lit Mig, right, we incorporated a lot of photography. I also incorporated digital collage art, and I think we're going to be pivoting. I'm thinking about it. Our focus a little bit in terms of the interior and all of that, right, with our relaunch. But I love photography, and I think it adds a really cool element. Anything visual to a publication, it adds another layer to it. Sure. I love publications that are, text based too, strictly that. There's a lot of imagery again itself from Wrights and very creative and vivid, right? But I think I really love, I'm a visual person, so I love seeing any, introduction or incorporation of photography or visual art. I've just always been that person. Anytime I worked on a project, I always tried to incorporate some sort of visual element because that's just how my mind worked, like a focal point, something visually or accompanied it, whether it be a drawing, a sketch for me, or photography or something, or you know yeah, so think about that. Again, I've shown on this podcast different lit magazine journals, some that have, illustrators, submit work and contribute, or, some lit magazine journals have contributing artists, contributing photographers, right? We had contributing photographers for a while, and I think we're going to possibly reintroduce that back into our publication. I'm thinking about it. So, yeah, I love photography. I grew up, taking a lot of photos with my folks and family. I mentioned this podcast, right? And, Polaroid cameras and, digital cameras and stuff over the years. I have a lot of fond memories, going to, Walgreens, Target, even, getting, our film developed and all that stuff, picking up all of the photographs and stuff and stacks of them. And it was always really fun, me and my mom used to do that a lot. And yeah, sometimes my dad would tag along. So yeah, anyways, that's awesome. So yeah, so they have their, reminders here, right? Fiction, poetry, and nonfiction submissions, right? Submissions should be a single piece of fiction, a single poem, or a single piece of nonfiction attached as a Word doc, right? Or PDF document in Times New Roman size 12. That's pretty standard, right? Double line spacing is preferable for fiction and nonfiction, it states here. Submissions must be complete self-contained pieces, not in excess of 1,000 words in length, and not serialized or extracts of larger works. Quotes or extracts of work currently in copyright under UK law will be included in nonfiction if fair use can be justified at the discretion of Seaside Gothic, and will not be considered within fiction or poetry. Visual submissions, right? So submissions of photographs or illustrations should be attached as a set of between 5 and 10 high quality images of a variety of both portrait and landscape orientations. The collection in each image within should reflect the three criteria that define Seaside Gothic literature, with the images working together and maintaining an aesthetic consistency. For larger files, it says use WeTransfer. Yeah. So they have terms and conditions, of content submissions, and yeah, of course, I'm not going to read. I typically don't read privacy policies, terms and conditions, on the podcast, but you should totally, if you run or start a lit magazine journal yourself. Again, as I mentioned on the past couple of episodes, a little bit, right? Even in Palette Poetry's episode, right, and a few others, right? A lot of lit magazine journals have terms and conditions and privacy policies, so read through those very carefully, especially, the rights, in terms of that and what happens after an acceptance, all of that, right? And some places have agreements again that you sign, not all places. It states here, I will quote this off though. Seaside Gothic requires first UK rights in print and digitally, along with 3 months of exclusivity beginning from the date of publication of the print issue. If content is reprinted after the 3 month exclusivity window, a kind reference to Seaside Gothic and whatever may be deemed appropriate would be appreciated. Yeah. So that's pretty typical, crediting, right? However, they said, 3 months, right, of exclusivity. And yeah, I've shared on this podcast, some places have different lengths in terms of that, some places don't have a certain exclusivity time frame. They just are like, credit us as the first, place it's appeared, right? If you republish this elsewhere, we share it in any other form of publication or any format, right? Audio, podcast, etc. So yeah, just keep that in mind, um, yeah. I've seen some places even say a year, of exclusivity. But yeah, for Seaside Gothic, it's 3 months. So yeah, and that is pretty much it. They state, right, contributors receive a print copy of the issue containing their submission, along with a complimentary copy of the totem sent, by Royal Mail. Contributors will also receive an access to a lifetime digital subscription to Seaside Gothic and a permanent 25% discount on all issues ordered. In addition, any other discounts or promotions effective from the date the issue in which their work is first published becomes available to publicly order ahead of publication. Seaside Gothic, again, is a paying market, and the magazine is self-funded again. And again, right, the pay rate, right, is, you know, that per word. And yeah, image-based visual submissions being classified as a total of 2,000 words. They do payment via PayPal within 2 weeks of publication. If revenue increases or additional funding is secured, of course they'll increase it. That can is subject to change, right? Typical, yeah. Yeah. It says not you can't do multiple submissions, but simultaneous submissions are okay, right? Meaning you could submit elsewhere, but you should, of course, make others aware. Typically, right, if it's been accepted elsewhere. Again, you just want to submit one piece at a time, and yeah. With the exception of visual submissions, right, which contain at least 5 and no more than 10 images, right, in a single collection. So, yeah, they've had an influx, it states here, of AI generated submissions, and yeah, it is quite problematic for a lot of presses, lit mags, and journals, right? Yeah, so it's definitely tough. Same thing. At Dippy Lit Mag, and we've seen from time to time AI generate images and stuff for some of our photography calls, and we're like, that's we all right, Satan, no AI, right? So yeah, it you got to read guidelines very carefully, and things like that. So yeah. So yeah, it says, of course, if 3 months has passed, you can query about your submission, and contributors, right, agree to Seaside Gothic holding their name, or pen name, etc., right, profile picture, email address, right, contact information and stuff, receiving updates, all of that stuff, right. um yeah, acceptance rates by Seaside Gothic for open submissions are tracked and available to subscribers, right? And yeah, so they have like some things you can unlock with the Patreon subscription tier. Obviously, some stats exist on Chill Sub's overview page, and yeah. So what I really like that Seaside Gothic has here is open submission windows, right? So they have recurring windows that others can look forward to, which is really nice. Not every place does this. We don't do this currently, but I would love to, right? Have certain specific windows, yeah. Um, yeah, so 2026, they have it already planned out. That's awesome. So January 12th to January 18th, right, is an upcoming window. April 13th to April 19th, July 13th to July 19th, October 12th through October 18th, right, for 2026. And I love they have a little countdown here, right? 68 days, 0 hours, 43 minutes, and 32 seconds, right, guys? Until the next submission window in January 12th, 2026, the day after my birthday, guys. That's awesome. But yeah, totally. I think that's cool. I love countdown clocks and fun things like that. So yeah, so they have 4 windows here. Every place is a little bit different, but I think when you have recurring windows, then submitters can always be like, bookmark their calendar or plan in advance. I think it's helpful to them, to do that. Um, yeah, open windows begin at midnight on the first day of opening and end at midnight the last day of the opening, Greenwich Mean Time. And yeah. Submissions sent outside, of course, during the windows are not considered, right? Yeah, so that's pretty standard. And yeah, they have a subscription button, reminders, and always helpful to have subscription buttons, donation reminders in more than one place on your site. They have their policy, returns, privacy, right? I won't click into those, but totally. Take some time to read those. If you start your own lit mag and journal, I think it's very beneficial. Even if you're a submitter, you should peek into, right, the terms of conditions, the privacy policies. Be aware of those things, right? Don't just click on things and assign things without reading. Obviously, right? Read very carefully anything you're doing in terms of that. Um, yeah, they have their social media linked at the bottom and other things like that. So I think that's pretty much it. Again, they have the gift shop. Most lit magazine journals have a fun merch shop or some kind. So yeah, totally. Check out some of Seaside Gothic's issues. I think it's a really stellar magazine in existence. Love the covers again of these. These are really beautiful, photography, and yeah, I think it's a very unique publication. In terms of Patreon, right, you totally, can become a member, and they have an international print subscription. Of course, it's going to be on the higher side, outside of the UK and stuff like that. Yeah, so we've had a lot of again, writers and contributors from the UK and stuff like that. So we've had to, place. I think that helps again to offer your, publication in more than one bookshop location, or different stores. Some are, UK based, if or do international shipping, and it helps to have digital and print, more than one format for others, right? Too, if they can't perhaps, pick up international print subscription, maybe because of the cost or something, those who want to read it, but yeah, it's nice they offer more than one format. Again, I've covered various, other platforms for facilitating digital subscriptions and things like that, right? I was mentioning, right, a couple episodes back, Brie, right? Essentially, digital issues, ebooks, right? Getting publishers, independent publishers in front of more libraries, right? So yeah, even earlier in the podcast, totally listen back to the Q&As, both from, the submitter side, and, some resources for, existing publishers or founding editors. Seaside Gothic currently intakes everything via email, right? So yeah, I've covered this podcast. I think again, submission man systems are really nice though. Particularly right just this year, right? Dibi Lit Mag moved away from Submittable. We're now in Subfolio. Of course, it is an additional expense, but Subfolio has some really reasonable plans, I think, and there are quite a few submission management systems out there that have CLMP membership discounts too. So yeah, that's Seaside Gothic, and yeah, totally check out their online sections that are available to read free of access. You can also again think about subscribing right through Patreon. Right, they have digital subscriptions, also UK based subscription, and international print subscriptions. Always a good idea. Again, just a reminder, offer if you're starting a Lit Journal, offer it in more than one format. Digital and print. Especially, don't forget to circle back to those episodes. Always try to, give reminders on that. Episode 20, look very carefully at the description on that episode. I dropped a bunch of links to several other, platforms, that help facilitate digital subscriptions too. And, things like that. And print subscription setups you could look into, or integrations. Most of those platforms, though, again, they have to vet your publication, and some of them you have to approve you into their library and things like that. Even Exact Editions is one that's out there, right? And I think this year, right, they have a CLMP membership discount on Exact Editions. That I haven't reached out to Exact Editions yet or anything like that. Brie was another episode, right? Not too long ago, I mentioned, right, how they're, helping publishers, with digital distribution, right, of issues and publications, right, off to libraries and schools. And then I covered physical distribution on a couple episodes, right? So you can do keyword searches on that, print distribution platforms, and the other episodes I mentioned on the past podcast, episode 2, the specific numbers, and earlier on in the series. So then, yeah, I just want to predominantly show Seaside Gothic because I think they have a very beautiful series that they developed, and the incorporation of photography in their issues, and both online and print, right? And the Patreon setup, I think, is a good example of what's possible. Different ways to incorporate that into a publication. I've showed on this podcast. So obviously there are a few alternatives I think out there to Patreon. There was this like French based platform. I don't remember what it was called, but it wasn't open right to those in the US or outside. It was similar, I think, to some other it had some options for membership setups and also merch stores. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. If I can remember it, I'll totally will share. But anyways, yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, once in a blue moon, I do, check out places myself, submit to places, but predominantly I think I am taking a break from that, and occasionally I like to enter like prompt challenges and stuff myself. But yeah, have been, again, working on Dippy Lit Mag, Dippy Press, right? And, thinking about how to restructure things in the future. And also working on this Lit Mag Lab series, right? Just sharing some resources, my journey, my thoughts, and taking the time to go through a few examples of guidelines and different things to take into consideration if you start your own late magazine journal, whether it be solely print or solely online or print and digital, yeah. So I hope these episodes are helping you again. So what I'm hoping to do instead, the submitter questions I had in mind earlier, I mentioned in some of the other episodes, I'm actually going to think about doing articles around those online, and totally, check out the Substack and the other places I post this podcast out to, and some typed articles accompanying the episodes. I will definitely be doing in the near future. I'm hoping to do at least, some interviews with some of the platforms I mentioned on this podcast, some of the resources as well. So you get some insight into what led up to the creation of it, some of the key features of them. So this podcast, again, is to predominantly help, submitters again, and, future founding editors, existing editors or publishers, or anyone looking to, dive into the lit mag world, or presses even. So if it, again, is helping you, feel free to drop a comment wherever you're listening on, or leave a rating, or anything like that, thumbs up. It definitely helps me. It helps, I think, the algorithm. I don't know how the algorithm works, but obviously the more that engage with whatever, it could be on, I think, Substack, YouTube, social media. I haven't really done a bunch on social media tied to this or anything like that, besides the podcast and occasional typed articles, but just trying to, give sometimes some accompany, type text with some of these episodes too. So yeah, if you see me drop off here, the end of the year is coming up here, some holidays. So, and yeah, so I probably will do some articles and things like that. Yeah, but if you have any comments or anything like that, feel free to drop those. I do try to absolutely look at those, and helps me, I guess, too. So take care, guys, and check out Seaside Gothic. Check out some of the past episodes. Again, not all of this podcast is, solely talking about, Lit Mag's websites and things like that. Try to share some resources, some additional platform services, submission management systems. There's quite a few episodes on that, like Subfolio, and a couple other ones I mentioned earlier. PS, guys, just an additional PS note. I usually tack these on towards the very end. So in terms of site, yeah, again, everything is very easy to find. I mentioned this on quite a few of the episodes of other lit magazine journals. There's a search, right, which is nice to see. And yeah, my one comment would be, I think it would be nice if there was a submit, button up top here in the menu. It is, of course, available to find linked elsewhere in submissions down below, right? But yeah, that's just my one comment. I think it'd be nice if that was also visible up top in the main navigation menu. They do have events section. I didn't take you guys out there in a contact section, which is always good to have, and a lot of Lit Magazine journals do a lot of really cool events, locally, as I mentioned, right? Even with after dinner conversation and several other Lit Magazine journals. So yeah, these are cool. Most Lit Magazine journals do have, YouTube channels. So please do check out some of the Lit Magazine journals and presses, even I mentioned. They do have, again, YouTube channels, most of them, not all, but yeah. So it looks like they have some YouTube videos, and yeah. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Again, Seaside Gothic intake submissions currently, as of November 2025. I'm doing this episode via email, right? And I think, again, it's really nice though to have a submission manager, instead of just email. I just give recommendations to alternatives out there, right? I have an overview guide. So I really like Subfolio, right? I would say, again, do check out, the Subfolio episodes on this podcast. And also I think Dapple, is based out of London. They just launched this year, right? And they're gradually making improvements, I think, to their submission management system, and Subfolio as well, this year as well, technically launched. So several other alternatives exist beyond submittable, beyond email, right? I mentioned tally forms, and just trying to mention those again, because I think In terms of email, I think it's hard for submitters, again, I think, to really see any status or, activity on their end, right? And I really love how you're able to message other, submitters, and even collaborate more so with a team, your editorial assistants, your reading team, messaging and chatting, in submission management systems. I think that's what's really nice, to centrally manage and communicate on everything and have an archive, right? Instead of it being just through email. But a lot of lit magazine journals till today, strictly use email. It's not a huge deal, but I think it is very beneficial to have a submission management system. There are some reasonably, budget, cost friendly ones out there that I've covered on this podcast. So, do check it out. Do check out the overview guide of the various submission management systems I'm aware of. I'm sure over time, throughout the years, a couple more may be created, or other platforms and tools, but as of 2025, those are the ones I'm aware of, in terms of options to intake submissions, and if you're going to start your own lit mag and journal. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. All in all, really beautiful, really awesome website. Love the, again, the incorporation of photography. Just yeah, it's a very cool. And Plunder, right? I think that bookshop is awesome. I love tea. I love books, and that's awesome, right? I think, again, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, that I wasn't aware of Plunder's existence and connection to Seaside Gothic at all. So, I typically give like movie recommendations on most episodes, not all, just on all the podcasts I do, because I love movies. I think they also inspire us, throughout our life. Maybe, the writing we do, some things in our life, totally. So I'm trying to think of, obviously everyone's aware of Pirates of the Caribbean, right? That's pretty common, but I think one of my all-time favorite animated movies was definitely Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas, from 2003. I used to rewatch that over and over again. I just really loved that, the main characters and the plot and story. It was just a really fun animated movie, right? So check that out, Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas, 2003. I also must say it's not necessarily a sea themed movie, but again, a huge fan of Atlantis: The Lost Empire, 2001, and that's another animated film. Over the years, I've seen things, right? The Perfect Storm, some sadder movies, Open Water. I mentioned on this podcast all of the open water movies I've seen, and a lot of survival at sea movies. Lost at Sea, also Poseidon, right? Poseidon Adventure, the 1970 movie, 1972, 2006 Poseidon, right? And Deep Blue Sea, 1999, and a bunch of other, sea movies, shark movies. I've seen nearly every single shark movie out there, almost every single one, except the, I think, overly LOL ones like Sharknado, and the ones that have obvious, are pretty unrealistic, right? CGI and stuff, right? But yeah, tons of Lost at Sea movies I've seen, and survival type sea movies. So, and also I was a huge fan of a lot of Discovery Channel series back in the day, right? Deadliest Catch, and Bering Sea Gold, out of Alaska, and some various series there, and whole aspect of dredging gold. It was very fascinating, how they would dive under, the ice during the cold freeze over, some of them, and the various expenses and all of that, and the various teams, out dredging gold. I don't know. That was always interesting to me, and yeah. So yeah, just some movie recs for you guys, and totally check out Seaside Gothic. Again, I think they have really cool issues, and I'm going to read more of I've read a little bit, prior to doing this episode and earlier this year. Yeah, but totally, there are some really great reads that are available for free to read, and totally you could become a subscriber, if you love the sea, right? There are, again, a couple other lit mags and journals out there that focus or tie back to the sea that I really love too. Frozen Sea Journal, right? Check that out. They have some really stellar spoken word incorporation and highlighting that on their site, and I think on their channels, social media. Also, I mentioned Boats Against the Current mag is very cool, and several others, right? You can do keyword searches in some of the databases I mentioned for finding lit mags and journals beyond chill subs, right? There's Duosuma, so Discover Opportunities page, right? Subfolio, the Smishman system has a Discover Opportunities page, and of course Submittable. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. Seaside Gothic, yeah. And I'll try to. I'm not sure when I'm going to do episodes again. We're coming up towards the end of the year, so just trying to fit in as many as possible. And yeah, check out some of the typed articles I'm doing for the series too. And yeah, take care, guys. Yeah, have awesome days ahead. Yeah.